All right, hello and welcome everybody. Thank you all for hopping into our class today. We are going to be doing our stability and stretch portion of our group exercise. So starting with our warm-up, we're going to have a cat-cow, quad rocks, and what is that? Oh, our Cossack rocks. I'll show you guys what that is, a new fun little exercise, opening up the hips. And then we're going to go through a little bit of a stability and core strengthening circuit. That is going to be a single leg balance to reach. We're going to go over how to do single leg RDLs. And then we're also going to move into our Patrick step. Might take that one out depending on kind of what we've got here. And then we're going to go on to a Cossack squat, a Pike single leg raise, bird dogs, dead bugs, and then traditional plank, getting our core nice and worked out, nice and activated. So following that, once we go 2 times through, we're going to go into a hurdler stretch, and then we're going to have our hamstring fold into a pigeon pose, and then our lizard pose as well. So without any further ado, we're going to hop right into our warm-up. Dun, dun, dun. All right, going straight into our cat-cow here. We're going to get our hands directly below our shoulders, knees below our hips, hips and shoulders nice and level, back flat. And we're going to drop the belly button down towards the ground, tucking the hips up, tilting the head back, and pushing the ground away, raising the spine to the ceiling. Moving back and forth between these 2 poses. Getting nice and mobile through the hips, the spine, and the shoulders. And a few more here. And good. Hey, Heather, how are you doing? We're just getting started with our warm-up here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for hopping in. So we just finished up our cat-cow. Now we're going to go into our quad rocks here. So we're going to get 1 knee forward and coming forward into a lunge, and then extending back, sitting back onto our heel and extending that leg forward and moving back and forth, getting our hips nice and loose, trying to stay in one line of movement here as we move back and forth. Through our motion. Go ahead and come up, switching sides. Lunging forward and sitting back into our quad rock. Getting those hips nice and loose. Nice. Easy movement through the hips. Starting to just warm things up there. All right. Moving right along, we're going to go into our Cossack rocks. So this is a little bit of a newer movement here. The Cossack squat is essentially a lateral squat with a little bit of tilt to one side, but we're just going to introduce it a little bit here with the rocks, and then we'll get into a Cossack squat during our circuit. So what I want you to do is start with your feet wide and get down into a squat on one side. So just bending the knee down, getting your hands down onto the ground. And then from here, you want to try and keep your hips level as you move your hands across and shift your weight to the other leg. So I'm using my hands to support a good amount of my weight, and I'm keeping my hips nice and low as I move through here, trying to just stretch things out. If you're having trouble keeping the hips low, go ahead and bring them up a little bit higher, and then come back down as low as you can get into that squat on each side. But just getting some good lateral movement through the hips there. Let's go a few more. And done. Good. We'll stand up, get a few twists through the back, get our spine a little bit loose, get some strength back through our legs, getting our hips nice and warm. All right, now hopping into our circuit. The first thing we have is our single leg balance to reach. So with one foot out in front, similar to like how we would do with those hamstring sweeps, we're going to extend one leg out in front of us, bring the toes up and pick the heel up off the ground, reaching down towards the foot and coming back up. So it's really important here that as we're moving through, we're hinging at the hip and not just lowering our back down and rounding out, bringing our hand to our foot. We want to try and keep that knee fully extended out and really reaching as far as we can go and coming back up. Nice, consistent pace. Just moving back and forth, really challenging that single leg stability and range through the hamstring. And switching legs, getting our other foot planted, extending the leg out, toes pointed up, and keeping the back straight. We're driving the hips behind us as we bring the hand down towards the toes. Few more. And done. Good. Next up, we're going to do our single leg RDL. Now for this exercise, since we're going to be challenging the balance kind of a lot here, it might be helpful to stand next to a shelf or have a chair or a couch or table or something that you can just gently rest your hand on to help correct your balance here. But what we're going to do is, keeping one leg planted on the ground, we're going to swing forward, raising our heel up, keeping everything nice and in a line as we lower our chest down to the ground. So you're creating a nice flat T shape with your body as you swing that leg back, lower the chest down, keeping everything nice and flat through the back. So I'm not rounding out my back and scooting back like that, but I'm standing nice and tall, keeping that tall, straight posture as I lean forward and come back. Now just using that shelf or chair or couch as a little bit of a guide for our balance, but really trying to keep as much weight as we can on that one leg. Let's get a couple more on this side. Keeping that knee nice and straight and switching sides. Getting like, if you can imagine one of those, I'm imagining one of those birds, those little bird ornaments that you often find in people's kitchens, that you fill the beak up with water and the base with water, and it keeps dipping back and forth, feeding itself with water, and it just moves nonstop on that sort of pendulum motion. That's kind of what we want here, is just hinging right at the hip, extending that leg back, and go ahead and rest. Those can be tricky at first, so give yourself some time to really think about the motion that you're doing. Okay, next up we've got our Cossack squats. Okay, so this is going to be similar to what we were doing in the warm-ups, although we're actually going to be coming up and down each time. So it's similar to a lateral squat, but you're going to extend out and let this foot pop up, so it adds a little bit of stability challenge. So I'm coming up, lowering down as far as I can go, and just rotating that heel out, keeping your hips back, weight over the midpoint of the foot, really just loading one leg at a time here. Let's get a couple of these in. Some good challenging work. Really focusing on finding a good flow back and forth between each side. Really controlling the weight and balance of the movement. Let's go a few more. And rest. Good. Next up, we're going to do our pike single leg raises. So we're going to assume our pike position here, getting our hands down on the mat, extending the hips up from here. So we're going to bring our hips straight up into the air. And from here, once we're in our pike position, we're going to bring one leg up, extend it as high as it'll go, coming back down and switching sides. Trying to get a good amount of weight pressing through the shoulders. So you're really stabilizing with the hands and the shoulders as you switch feet here. Giving some good work there all the way through the shoulder. A few more. Good. And lowering down. All right, next up, we've got our bird dogs. So staying in this quadruped position, we're going to extend opposite hand and leg out and give a nice hold for about 20 seconds and switch sides. So bringing our hand and leg out, finding that nice stability through the knee and the hand, really sucking that belly button up towards the spine. Keeping a nice flat line all the way from the fingertip through the toe. Keeping everything nice and engaged. Go ahead and switch sides. Bringing that opposite hand and foot up. Finding a nice even line, sucking the belly button up to the spine. Few more seconds here. Keep it nice and stable between the hand and the knee. And relax down. Good. Next up, we've got our dead bugs. So flipping over onto our back, replicating the same movement, although we're going to be constantly alternating. So instead of holding here, we're now going to switch at a quick pace. So bringing the hands and knees up, you're going to get your feet up in the air, hands on top of the knees, and you're going to again extend out opposite arm and leg. Tap the ground. As soon as you feel that tap, bring the hand and the leg back up and switch sides. Just extending out into that straight line, pulling that lower back down into the ground, not letting it round out. Really activating the core, nice and strong, getting those lower abdominal muscles engaged and activated. Few more. And relax. Good. Really important to work on that contralateral or opposite side stability, because more often than not, when we injure ourselves, we're working from one side to the other on a cut, or we lose balance and we're not able to stabilize from one side to the other very quickly. So that's kind of what we're working on here. Now, lastly, we're going to put it all together. Full body, full core engagement with our plank. So getting our elbows down below our shoulders, kicking the feet back, bringing the knees up, getting our hips in line with the shoulders, sucking the belly button up to the spine, and we're pressing the ground away through the elbows. Getting nice and engaged and compact through the torso, all the way through to the toes. Full body engaging all together at one time. A nice little hold here. Couple more seconds. And relax. Nice job. 50% of the way there. Finish with the first round of the circuit. We're hopping back up, going into our single leg balance to reach. So again, if you want, position yourself next to a chair, couch, shelf, whatever you might find in your room to help out with that balance. And we're coming down, reaching opposite hand towards the foot. Make sure you're working that opposite side stability there, really driving the hips behind. So scooting that butt out behind, keeping the back nice and tall, stabilizing through one leg and one leg only. We got a couple more on this side. And finish. Switching sides, popping that toe up, hinging down at the hip, and coming back up, keeping that chest nice and tall. You want to have it be parallel to the ground, so you're not letting your torso fold, but you're keeping that torso nice and tall. As you drive the hips back, you can effectively lower the shoulder through the hip and not the back. If that makes sense. Let's get a few more here. And done. Good. Next up, we've got those single leg RDLs. So really going to challenge our stability again, using that shelf or couch or chair as a guide. And we're going to swing, keeping that chest parallel to the ground as we lower. We're not folding underneath, tucking our back, but keeping our back nice and tall. We're going to swing the leg back, heel coming up towards the ceiling, and rocking back to middle. Again, acting as that little bird feeder ornament, just swinging back and forth on that hinge. Really thinking about trying to keep that torso and leg in line the whole time, moving as one piece together. Go ahead and switch sides. Nice, tight, sucking that belly button to spine, keeping that chest nice and in line with the foot. That's swinging back, bringing that ankle up towards the ceiling. A few more. And done. Good. Next up, we've got our Cossack squats. So getting nice and wide, we're going to lower down to one side, bring that foot and toe up, coming up, and switching over to the other side, finding a nice flow and control of the weight. Staying nice and balanced, keeping that weight over the midpoint of the foot. Back and forth. A few more here. And rest. Very good. Next up, we have our pike single leg raises. So getting our hands down on the mat. We're going to bring our hips up into the air, picking the knees up, driving the heels towards our floor or our mat. From here, we're going to shift our weight over the hands and bring one foot up at a time. Practicing that overhead stability and strength. Really getting some weight onto our shoulders. Still working out the hamstrings a little bit. Getting nice and easy, just bringing that heel up towards the ceiling and back down. And you want to try and keep your hips square here. So as I'm coming up, I'm not opening up my hips and kicking my heel to the other side, but moving straight up. A few more. And lower down. Nice job. All right, next up, we've got our bird dogs. So extending out opposite hand and leg and holding for about 20 seconds here. Getting a nice flat line from hand to toe. And switching sides. Extending that hand and foot out. Nice flat line. Sucking that belly button up to the spine. Pressing the ground away. and lowering down. All right, next up, we've got our dead bugs. So flipping over onto our back, getting our feet up off the ground, hands and knees come up, hands on top of the knees, feet up in the air, and we're extending opposite hand and leg out, giving a tap, and coming back. Nice, even pace, keeping that back pulled down to the floor. Really trying to engage those pelvic abdominal muscles. Nice, even pace, slight tap to the ground, and bring those knees back up. Few more. And done. Good. Next up, we've got our plank, finishing things out. Nice and even here. Getting our hands, or forearms rather, down to the mat. Kicking our feet back, knees come up, and our hips and shoulders are level. Sucking the belly button up to the spine, pressing the ground away through the elbows. Keeping our shoulders and hips nice and flat. Really engaging all the way, pressing through from the elbows, through the toes. Really trying to engage our torso here, keeping our hips up. Few more seconds. And lower down. Nice job. Finished out our circuit. Got some good stability and balance work there. So we're going to move into a quick stretch. First thing we're going to do is our hurdler. So we did a lot of hamstring work today. That'll help loosen up the hamstrings. But as we often find, spending a lot of time in seated positions, our hamstrings can get tight and underactive, and also our hip flexors will get tight too. So the first thing we're going to do is open up those hip flexors. So we're going to pull one ankle back towards our hip, fold that knee, and lay back down onto the ground, or staying popped up onto our elbows, or popped onto our hands, whichever regression works for you. Make sure you're listening to the tension, listening to your body. You don't want to push it too far. Getting nice deep breaths in and out, trying to signal those muscles to relax. And rolling out to the side, extending that leg back out, rolling over, folding the other leg back, and laying back into the stretch. Getting nice deep breaths in and out, feeling that stretch all through the quad, into the ankle. Just trying to relax and release that tension. And rolling out to the side, extending that leg out. We're going to get into one last stretch here. It's just going to be a deep squat. So getting onto our feet, dropping our hips down towards our heels, and we're just going to rock back and forth, opening up the feet, getting nice and deep. Hands come down onto the ground, elbows on the inside of the knee, and you're leaning your weight forward onto the hands, gently opening up the hips and stretching through the groin and our adductors. And pressing up through the ground, coming out of our stretch, feeling nice, loose, and rejuvenated. All right. Thank you so much for hopping into our class today. Hope you had a great time. If you have any questions, concerns, or ideas to help me improve the class, we are just getting started here, so any feedback is great feedback. Really appreciate you hopping in and checking in. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and hope to see you next time.